Good morning, Web 3.0 TV viewers. I'm Matthew Dixon, and I'm bringing you the latest traders report from the crypto world. So we'll dive in straight away to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's had a really good weekend. We're above 108,000, and it's off the back of some pretty positive news on a geopolitical front. The ceasefire is holding between Iran and Israel, which is a really good sign. That's very supportive of risk assets, including Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, S&P 500, etc. So that's good news. Also, really good news on the regulatory front. I think things are really moving forward. We're actually now seeing US agencies considering cryptocurrency mortgages, and that would be a really positive development. So potentially, if you're starting to be able to use crypto for lending, you're then starting to get yield on the cryptocurrency. So it's really maturing as an asset, and I think this is bodes really well. And we're seeing institutions really topping up their bags, adding to their holdings. I understand Michael Saylor from Strategy is has been topping up. There's a few other institutions as well, been piling up with Bitcoin. So and obviously we've got the Ethereum ETF. There's talk of other new ETFs. We're talking about a Solana ETF maybe coming in the near future. So this is all really positive crypto news. But where are we at the moment in the markets from a basically a technical analysis perspective? So I think Bitcoin, we had a strong rally up to the all-time high wave three, which was 111,000-ish here. We can see I've got it labeled as a wave three. Now, what's interesting is we've actually been sliding away slightly downwards, slightly sideways. It's very corrective in nature. It means it's overlapping. So we can see, for example, this move up here overlap this movement down here. It's clearly corrective. Now, that's really encouraging. It tells me that we do have new all-time highs to come at some point with Bitcoin. But interestingly, we've actually held this overhead resistance level. This green line I've got here is an overhead resistance. So far, we've not managed to breach that resistance. We've had a few attempts. So obviously one attempt here. We've got one, two, three attempts here. That's four in total. And overnight we just about touched again. So that's five attempts to break this overhead resistance. So if and when it does break, it could be quite dramatic, potentially to the upside. But for the time being, I think we have basically a correction to the downside, which is in the form of W, X, Y wave. That's 333 correction to give us a wave four correction. That would tell us that we should have a wave five, which would take us to new all-time highs. And that wave five itself will be broken into five waves. And we can see the first wave here in the red. I've got labeled as wave one, but even that is itself broken into five smaller waves. So I think we've completed a little five-wave move to the upside. We've either completed or very close to completion. That would tell us that we then get a little bit of a pullback, and perhaps this overhead resistance here might just hold for the time being as we get a small pullback in a red wave two correction, but then we should blast higher, hopefully in wave three. So as I say, I think the backdrop is looking really good. We may get some small corrections to the downside, but overall, I think it's looking I'm pretty confident that we should see new all-time highs in the not too distant future. But it's a potential short-term turning point. So it just depends on your time frame for trading, whether you want to take profits now, or whether you're a longer term trader or a hodler and want to basically hold for the long-term picture, for potentially more gains over the long term. I'm a relatively short-term trader, but everybody has to trade according to their own particular strategy, and their own time frame. So you need to do your own due diligence. You need to trade your own risk reward according to your particular strategy. As I say, for me, I'm just getting a little bit wary short term. We might get a bit of a pullback. So that's Bitcoin, and I think it's a reasonably clear picture just to summarize that this is a correction downwards to this overall impulse to the upside. So being a correction, we should at some point push to new all-time highs. So longer term, I'm confident still with Bitcoin. Same sort of picture if I just move over to Ethereum. Quite interesting with Ethereum. Let me just shrink this chart so you can see a bit. We actually did turn at the expected point round about here. We turned higher. That, if I remember rightly, was the upgrade that we had on Ethereum, which gave us a really good impulsive move to the upside. And yeah, we moved really nicely from around the 2,100 area to currently around 2,500. we're holding above that 2,500. That's quite important. But again, we appear to have potentially from this ABC down, which is corrective. We look as though we've moved impulsively in the first wave to the upside. Maybe a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That fifth wave may not yet be complete, but again, I suspect we may get a little bit of a pullback, just a modest pullback, perhaps with Ethereum before we then rally on towards the upside. So you can see this correction here was fully expected. It was in the form of an ABC correction, and now we're expecting to move to the upside, which we already have done quite substantially. But as I say, maybe a short term, little bit of a pullback before we start to push again quite firmly towards the upside for Ethereum. I think Solana again tells quite a story. I'll probably open this one out a little bit to show you where I think we're at. I've been trading Solana very actively. I did predict this on X, on my X feed, which is at MD Trade. I expected it to be a bottom somewhere around this 126, 130 area. And this actually coincided with when Trump bombed the Iranian nuclear sites. And that was actually a really good potential turning point. So we've got a sharp sell-off associated with that. They're often really good turning points, especially as we've entered into some sort of current peace treaty between Israel and Iran and America, of course, that are not doing any further escalation at the moment. So that's looking really good. And since that time, we've had a really good rally. And the movement up has been in 5 waves here. So I've labeled that as either wave 1 or wave A. Now we can't tell the difference at this stage. And then we have an ABC down for wave 2, but it's wave 2 or wave B. And then we appear to be moving up again in 5 waves, which will be either wave 3 or wave C. Now, if it really is wave 3, it should probably go well beyond here to the upside. If it's a wave C, it's likely, the most likely is that wave C equals wave A. Now that would be at $159.54 for Ethereum. Now what's quite interesting, again, we can see the 5 waves here. I'll just open this out a little bit more so you can see it. I think it's a really nice illustration of Elliot wave and the way it works with fractals. So we're looking at this wave here, but this itself is a 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're working on the 5th wave now, I believe. Now the 3rd wave, we can see after we've got wave 1 up, 2 down, we can see the 3rd wave itself is broken into a really nice little 5-wave move. So we can see here, wave 1 up, wave 2 down, wave 3 up, wave 4 down, and wave 5 up. That gives us the wave 3 extension. That was really nice. And then we get an ABC wave 4 down. This is all beautiful according to Elliott wave rules. And wave 4, of course, isn't allowed to overlap into territory of wave 1, which clearly it didn't. Now, what I think may be happening is what's called an ending diagonal. It's not unusual, but it's slightly different rules to a normal impulsive wave to the upside. There is overlap allowed between, in this case, between wave 4 and wave 1. So potentially, if this larger wave 4 was complete here, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and we would be working on a 5th wave to the upside. And it looks as though it's working beautifully. Now, ending diagonals usually work within trend lines, and that's why I've got these trend lines drawn. So we can see that the trend line has been obeyed, the support line below has been obeyed. Then above, we've got this overhead resistance line, and it's basically an expanding triangle, which is not uncommon at all. In fact, it's probably the most common situation when you have what's called ending diagonal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wave 3 again is not allowed to be the shortest. So there are certain rules here that must be obeyed according to Elliott wave principle. This was devised by Ralph Nelson Elliott in the 1930s. And it's a really powerful way to build your framework. You use other indicators as well, but to build a framework for markets and for chart formations. So this, as I say, has abided by the rules perfectly. I think we may get one more push to the upside. My target, ideal target, as I say, would be $159.54. That's the ideal target. Doesn't mean it's, there are no certainties in trading, but that's looking possible and probable at the moment. Now, if that happens and we get a turning point, as I say, this could be wave 3 or wave C. If it's wave 3, it could actually continue on up higher and we get further movement to the upside. But I think temporarily, we probably might get a pullback. Now, from here to try to understand where we're at with the markets, I would like to flip back over to dollar index. So look to dollar index here. So we've had the dollar selling off quite sharply, and this was again according to expectations. And we'll scroll out a little bit here, probably onto the daily, to show you where we're at in the long term on dollar index. Dollar index is, of course, really important to understand and to follow because long term it's correlated with crypto, but short term it's actually inverse correlation with crypto. So as we see the dollar falling in value, when I say crypto, inversely correlated to risk assets, crypto being a risk asset. So what I'm saying is short term, we see an inverse correlation. So as the dollar falls in value, we actually see crypto rising in value. And that's really been very, very, very accurate. So when we saw a high in the dollar index, that corresponded with the FTX low in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. But right now, we're pushing towards a low in dollar index, and there's a long held support line here, a parallel support channel that we're in within the dollar index. Now there's a real chance that we're going to bounce off that support line, that channel there, real chance, and that'll be around the 96 area for dollar index. We're currently only 97.12, something like that. So that would tell me if we get a bounce there, a bounce higher for the dollar, that would potentially give us a bit of a turn down for cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, etc. And that's the picture we were looking at. We were thinking that maybe we'll get a bit of a pullback, and that's what I said. So if we do get a bounce here on the dollar, that would give us a pullback. But we apparently potentially have a bit lower to go here on the US dollar. That would give us further, bit more of a pump in cryptocurrencies. That would align again. If we just flip back quickly to Solana, we can see, again, I'd have to probably go back to a shorter time frame here. I'll go to the 1 hour just to show you that. Remember on that ending diagonal, short term, we do expect probably a push higher to this 159 level, and that would correspond with the dollar index push lower. So these things all fit together beautifully, like pieces of a jigsaw. So that's my expectation. But as I say, just flipping back again to the dollar index, there's so much more we can be looking at. But the dollar index, I think, may have completing a correction here. Again, we can see this is sideways movement, not really going anywhere, totally overlapping, and it's basically what's called a bear flag. So it's some kind of bear flag formation. You would expect movement to the downside. So I do expect more movement to the downside to come, as indicated by this green line. Movement to the downside means probably a bit more positivity yet to come in crypto. Maybe we'll challenge the previous all-time high with Bitcoin. Maybe we'll get that little pump we expect in Solana. So, but then potentially at least a short-term reversal, but I believe a reversal of some sort when we hit this channel on the dollar index. So that's probably enough for the start of the week. Gives you a bit of a flavor of things to come during this week. I'm looking, if we reach the 159 on Solana, personally, I'd be looking to take profit. You know, as I say, indicated on previous shows, I was looking to go long Solana and other risk assets from around that 126, 130 area. We're in really good profit now. So now for me would be a good time to crystallize some of that profit and maybe keep my powder dry to live for another day, maybe wait for a bit of a correction down. If we do get this dollar index reversing to the upside, that would give us a bit of a sell-off in crypto. And I love to buy dips in crypto. That's what it's all about, buying the dips. So I think when we come to the Thursday show, we'll probably come back to gold again, see where we're at with gold, because again, gold is a very, very important asset and it holds correlations with other risk assets. So let's look forward to that. Thank you so much for listening today. Look forward to catching up soon.